two, one, and go. We're live. Exactly. So you can see, oh, I can see it. So we're live. Hello, everyone watching, and welcome to our series. I hope everyone really enjoyed this. I think for 3 months, Daniel, right? Almost for 3 months, we had this series.
Yeah, pretty much. Yep.
Almost, yeah. And when Daniel and I were talking about how to wrap this up, I think we didn't, find a better profile than Kelly Hoya. Hoya, right? Is that am I saying it right? Kelly
That's
Hoya.
how we say it in the old country. I say it hewer more often than
You,
not, but I answer to anything.
you're okay because in German they would say Hoya.
Correct.
You're all right. Appreciate
Yes.
that. So, guys, everyone watching, honestly, it's great to wrap this entire series up with Kelly. She's the vice president of learning at PMI. And she was really so easygoing. I told her, "Hey, Kelly, the community wants to hear you." Okay, let's do it. Really, I appreciate your presence. As I told you in the backstage, in several posts, Pierre, said, "Talk to Kelly. She's really great." So I said, "You know what? Let's have Kelly really online with us." So we wanted to share a little bit about the future of project management. Everyone's talking now about the future, where we're heading to, what's going on in the project management world, the changes. Last month in Phoenix, there were big changes that are now announced. Like, for example, Pierre said, we're working on something more advanced than the PMP, maybe something the next level after PMP. Is that a senior project management certification? Is that something else? For example, I'm a PGMP certified myself. I'm preparing for my PFMP. I didn't just have time for it. Daniel also has got a few bunch of certifications. How do we imagine the future of project management to be? How the project managers, or what the project managers will need to succeed in their projects, and all of those questions. So really, Kelly, let me give you the stage. First of all, let people, let's, share some information about you, the people, introduce yourself the way you want, your really intensive background and history, and then we jump to the few other topics.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I'm so thrilled to be here. It's just like couldn't say yes quickly enough to the invitation, because although I've been with the Project Management Institute, PMI, now for just about 1.5 years, the community is absolutely the best aspect of all of that work. It's the opportunity to get to learn from project managers, project professionals around the world. It's extraordinary. So I'm joining you all here from New York City, my home office. I'm the vice president of learning, as we were just discussing before. And what that means is that at the Project Management Institute, I have the privilege of leading a globally distributed team who focuses on PMI's standards and publications, our courses, our digital guides, our live learning experiences and workshops, right? If it has to do with learning, development, upskilling, or reference, within the project professions, that's what my team is focused on. I have had the extraordinary privilege of getting to be present for some really monumental releases recently, such as the 8th edition of the PMBOK guide, which we're still celebrating. And I spend a lot of time, together with our leadership team here at PMI, thinking about where the project professions are going and what success looks like for projects, and then for the people who drive those projects. And learning is more important now than ever, I think, especially for project-driven work. So that's what I wake up and think about every morning, and go to sleep thinking about as well. So I'm thrilled to dig into that with some of you, some of that today.
Wow. So when I visit PMI's website, I see all of those standards and guides: PMO, project program management, PMBOK, of course, Agile, PBA, earned value. Even for earned value, there is a standard, if I'm not mistaken, and different other topics and areas. Which, honestly, Kelly, I've been. I know PMI for almost 20 years, almost. Okay, it hasn't been this rich, really. I don't remember it being this rich. What happened, like in the past, maybe 4 to 5 years, maybe 3 years? I don't know. But really, something has changed. Was it like due to change in leadership? Is it like, no, that's what the market needs? Is it like, no, we have a vision and now we're transforming that vision into action plans? What is it? Why has it suddenly become so rich in the past 4 to 5 years? Really?
I love this question. And is it cheating if my answer is all of the above? I think it's a combination of factors. Thank you for noticing, the kind of intensity of work and output. To me, it really feels like, on the one hand, the Project Management Institute it's an organization with an incredible legacy and history, right? Which I could not be prouder to get to step into and be a part of, right? We are not bootstrapping ourselves out of nothing. We are standing on the shoulders of, folks who came together in 1969 to start thinking about learning and sharing and the actual power of what I would call peer learning, right? But reaching out, finding another person who's doing similar work, sharing pain points, sharing best practices, and then saying, gosh, we should write this down. Other people would benefit from this too, right? And that's the ball that got everything rolling. And so Project Management Institute is one of community, and it's also one of knowledge sharing and of continuous learning. And it has grown a lot. It does feel like there's been this explosion of growth recently, right? And I think to me, that's the organization and the community that's behind the organization stepping up into the moment, right? There are, if you look at sort of economic history of the patterns of how work is accomplished and how value is created in different economies, project-driven work is exploding itself. And to me, more than anything, it's PMI recognizing that need and stepping up to try to drive change and assert, the fact that more than 1/3 of the global economy, based on our recent estimates, is project-based work, right? And that part of the global economy is growing faster than the rest of the global economy.
1/3.
Yes.
Wow, we're talking about trillions of dollars.
Exactly, right? And so whether your job is full-time, I lead and manage projects. I am a project program portfolio manager. I am a product manager, leading a number of product development projects. Or whether your work, that's not your job title, right? You still need to lead, run, manage, oversee, mentor, sponsor, participate in lots of projects. And so there's a need for things like this diversity of standards for learning and upskilling materials more than anything, I think. And then, of course, we have investment in particular areas like learning that drives this. But what's pulling that, I think, is a genuine need that we're trying to meet.
Wow. I'm surprised. Honestly, no, Daniel, you need to mute yourself, really, Daniel.
I knew it was a lot, right? I read all the articles and everything, and wow, that just blew me off my chair. Because I see that in my own work. I know Ahmed sees it the same, but just to hear that number based on research that you guys have done, and I'm sure others, Gartner and a few others, that's an amazing number. Again, just one of the reasons why I'm so passionate, I know Ahmed's so passionate about this, is because there are some project managers. We're going to need millions of more project managers. There's so much project work coming out. And, at the end of the day, we need standards, frameworks. We need these things in order, and an organization to kind of keep an eye on this and manage it for us, working with the community, bringing that stuff in, making sure we're continually iterating to make sure that at the end of the day, we have the best practices and everything that we need to truly, especially with that amazing number you just put out coming up. So one of the questions I had, and I get this from my mentoring students a lot, because and actually some of my coaching people that run ATPs and some coaching things, I see, like Ahmed said, it's exploded. Every time I look at the website, I feel like there's 50 new videos, there's 25 new courses, like every day something new, which is awesome, right? And certainly much needed. What are some of the other things that you guys are working on? What other kind of, how much more, how do I put this the right way? I guess really, like, what are your plans in the next 2 or 3 years to really expand that? Keeping in mind that we do have ATPs and others that provide a lot of that similar training. How do you kind of make sure that you're maintaining those relationships, but kind of don't cross that line where you're, I don't want to say putting them out of business, but enhancing their value as well, so that simultaneously we're getting it all over the place. ATPs, PMI themselves, all the trainers.
Yes, I love the way you're framing that. And I also, if I can just pick up something you said towards the beginning there, Daniel, and then let's dig in on your question. Another way of stating kind of the need we were talking about before is what we tend to call at PMI the talent gap, right? Which is part and parcel of that explosive growth and project driven work, right? Is this need for new project professionals, and for project professionals who can deliver more, deliver differently, deliver using AI, right, to support the very critical, the success of the projects that they lead, right? So that's a big part actually of how I on my team, when I think about learning needs we have for the community, I think a lot about the talent gap, right? In addition to that's the flip side of that overall growth. And I also appreciate, you're talking about a really critical part of how we think about learning and development, which is in partnership with our authorized training, program providers. So it's again, one of the things that I think that I really value about the work that we do and the work that I get to do is I get to talk to a bunch of other people who are also passionate about education and they've dedicated their career to it, whether it's, local PMP prep or it's, on a large scale broadcasting digitally like we're doing here to facilitate education. So, as much as we at PMI are investing in thinking and, what can we produce in 57,000 new courses, right? It's just as important to us, arguably more important, that we are thinking about the broader network and we're thinking about the community, right? That includes some of our training partners. And I would also say the flip side, right? We're just talking about all the standards and guides and publications and so on. We are, PMI is what's known as a standards developing organization, which means we have, the authority, the privilege to support and facilitate the development of American national standards that are globally recognized, right? Do we author them? Me with my little hands and my team? No, right? The opposite, right? Part of what we do, and it can be challenging, but that's where the beauty is create spaces to facilitate expert dialogue, expert consensus, see how it's changing, right? And publish that over time. I'll be the first to tell you sometimes that's more work than just being able to, plop something out from a content development point of view. But, that is just so central to our ways of working, is to just be in constant dialogue with our community, reflecting back their ideas, whether they're provocative ideas or there is an emergent consensus. It's a huge part of how we think about product development. It's the core of our ethos.
That's awesome. And that kind of, I guess, an A or B kind of question on the back end of that, and I'll pass it back to Ahmed in a second. How much with that answer? How much do you involve like the other providers, ATPs and others like that, to kind of work with them to kind of put stuff together, or is it always a place where PMI really just develops the content and then kind of passes it over to them and allows that, or do they ever work in concert together?
Yes. Oh, of course we work together. Yes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I mean, just last week, shout out to Chris. I was speaking with one of our authorized training provider partners who touches a lot, who teaches in a lot of different subject areas, and that's a critical partnership, right? That is boots on the ground, meeting with students, hearing their feedback, getting their input, and again, it's other expert educators, right? So we're talking about the craft of teaching and learning, or of reference materials, right? As much as, having a really robust channel for feedback. So it's that's an essential working relationship, and it's not always perfect, obviously, right? But
Yeah.
but it's incredibly enriching. It's critical to our success. We're critical to their success, and especially as we have this kind of like efflorescence of materials and expanding scope of needs that they're trying to deliver too, right? We need to be in constant dialogue, especially as we're bringing new things out and refining them as we go.
Yeah, just the entire ecosystem is amazing, how it's just constantly fed and iterated over and over again. I think that's what makes PMI so special.
It is. It is. Kelly, I have been for the past 2 decades. I have been in touch with probably hundreds to thousands of companies, but in different regions, different countries, different geographies. Let me tell you this: despite the huge effort PMI is making, and even other project management organizations, but now I'm focusing on PMI. Despite the effort, people are making on, whether on LinkedIn, whether on other platforms, trying to spread project management knowledge.
Mm.
Sometimes it surprises me that a big or a decent percentage of companies don't know project management, don't value project management, don't think project management is important or necessary. If they have an initiative or an endeavor, as we used to call it before, or a change which should be in a form of a project, they actually don't bother to give it the shape of a project. They say no, let's do it immediately, let's run with it. They just put a small plan and they execute without proper project management, project manager assignment, project management staff, etc. Are you aware of this at PMI? Are you aware, or do you have numbers? How much in percentage, but in different countries, not just United States or Europe, because I know both, Marcus there, but in different regions in the world. Let's talk about Africa. I'm from Africa. I'm from Tunisia, North Africa. I'm from Africa. I'm from also the Arab world, Asia, Latin America. How much in percentage is the awareness among the companies about the importance of project management? If you say that 1/3 of the world's economy is based on projects.
Yes, this is a very important question. And I think the observation behind the question, which is that it seems like project management is perhaps undervalued or underconsidered pretty widely, like that rings true to us. In fact, I believe we just published, I would need to flip over to my another tab in my browser here to validate this, but this question is so important to us. We've done a bunch of recent research that, if memory serves me correctly, may have been published yesterday, looking at executive perception of project success, project value, project outcomes, and the importance of the skill set behind it. Executive perception matters, so does the subset of what we call project sponsors, right? So these are leaders within an organization who may have been tasked with some time-bound initiative, endeavor, et cetera. They need to deliver value. How much are they investing in upfront restructuring using a project management skill set? How much have they or are they able to invest in the talents of their team to steward project success, right? And part of what we're researching are what are the things that move the needle the most in terms of driving actual project outcomes. Because, when I think about what motivates a lot of our efforts at PMI and the dialogue we're trying to push and the resources we're trying to develop, it's exactly this question of visibility and investment in project management as a skill set. There are, and part of what I think we've been able to do so far and will continue to do is to reflect back the story of the value of project management to an executive or to an organizational leadership audience in a way that speaks their language. So it's not us talking about how much we love project management and all its nerdy nitty-gritty details, because of course we do. It's us talking about, if you want your initiatives to succeed, are you aware that X percentage of projects tend to fail, and more of them fail when you don't invest in these three factors, and you get more successful outcomes, right? You deliver value that's worth the effort and expense invested when this particular subset of organizational factors is present, whether that's alignment with social outcomes, or social value rather than just financial value, or investment in measurement systems. It's another big finding in the research I'm talking about, right? Where you can see a tremendous impact on project outcomes. So it's a huge area of effort for us. I'm specifically not giving you numbers because the new research just came out and I want to reflect what's most up to date here, but it's such a big area of focus for us. And it's not just, how do we measure perception or value among organizational leadership? And we're like, well, only 30% of them said it was cool on this last survey. It's actually very specifically getting detailed insights for the purpose of feeding them back and using it to drive a case about, look, this is why this matters in language and concepts and outcomes you already care about. You don't have to be passionate about this like we are. You should just want this for good business reasons, right? And we'll show you exactly how it delivers more value.
So if I try to make some numbers up from my head, okay, just making this up, okay. Now, if we take like what you said, 1/3 of the world's economy is project based. Now let's assume in the world there is 1 billion working force. It's a little over 1 billion. Let's say a billion. Let's assume there are 350 million to 500 million people working, in activities that are project related. Okay. And now going back to PMI, looking at the numbers, from PMI, 1.7 million people, PMI certified, like whatever PMI certification certified. Like I think PMP alone is like 1.5 million, 1.55 maybe. Okay, over 1.5 million, definitely. Yeah.
Yes.
Plus the RMP, plus the ACP, the PMO now, the new one is like so much in demand, etc. Still, let's say out of 20 people who know PMI and are interested in PMI certifications, out of 20 people, only one person gets certified. So 1.7 million times 20, that's like what? We're probably talking about less than 40 million people. So, from 350 million to 500 million people in the workforce who are working in project-related activities, only a small fraction of that really either know PMI or know project management. Was there ever at PMI, or will there ever be at PMI, an entire calendar year called Project Management Awareness Year? Project Management Awareness Year, which means PMI is going to create ambassadors, like not volunteers, like we have every year, ambassadors in a very well thought of program where people can gain, for example, PDUs or points or credit or whatever you call it, just by spreading knowledge in electronized or network, which they can then, for example, I as Ahmed, if I can bring 10 people to PMI in a structure which PMI shares on their website, and I go and log the people's name there, and it's confirmed that they're active, etc. I get, for example, 5 PDUs or 10 PDUs or something, etc. Maybe in a project management awareness year, by having PMI has got almost 3 million followers just on LinkedIn, combined between two huge pages, more than 3 million followers. Imagine those 3 million followers, if each one of them spreads knowledge and awareness to 10 people. Now we're talking about 30 million, and 30 million in each one. If each one is doing the same, we probably could reach 100 million to 300 million people who are aware of PMI and project management in about a year and a half. So has PMI ever thought of project management awareness spreading year? If no, what do you think about the idea? If yes, what are the plans?
I was going to say, is this a question or is this a very detailed proposal I'm receiving in real time? Love it.
No, I'm ready. I don't know. You consider it or you take it the way you want. Really.
Yeah. No, of course. You're just cracking me up. I love it. So, thinking about visibility is super important to us, and it sounds like I should connect you with our community and our marketing teams to share this specific idea. We absolutely have, I'm aware of just in recent history at PMI in some particular areas. For construction is one that springs to mind, where I believe we've experimented with doing something similar, right? An explicit kind of ambassador program. It all ties back to the power of community, right? The power of PMI is not the 700 odd individuals who work here. It's the container and the space and the empowerment we provide, right, or strive to every day for a global community. Thinking about how we can leverage, a flywheel of different interconnected elements. I love the idea of project management awareness year. That is a big commitment. So I love to hear it. It's absolutely something that I know for sure we've already looked at components, yeah.
You see, I come from, sorry, Daniel, for this, just see, in I think probably 20 years back, I come from a country that is a very small country called Tunisia. It's right, below Italy, right next to Italy and Malta. And 20 years ago, probably the ex-president of my country, once at a United Nations conference suggested, we as Tunisia, we would like to suggest an international day of sport. And I told myself, I was younger, I was probably 22, 21. I said, how can you suggest that? We're just Tunisia. We're not China or United States or France. Surprisingly, that suggestion was accepted. So, yeah, now there is an international sport day worldwide. I don't know which day exactly, but it is. And I know also in this world, there are, international project management day, there is international project management week organized, by different entities. I don't know if any of them is UN admitted. I don't know really. There is the United Nations Project Management Day, because anyway, a lot of the work United Nations they do, is based on projects. But really, because I believe so much in project management, before talking to you the past 2 days, I was telling myself, you know what? Since we have probably the best version of the PMBOK just released, many people are saying that so far. Okay, I mean, there are a couple of critics here and there. We can never avoid critics, but actually, critics are so welcome because we are always evolving. And now with this team of PMBOK 8, together with Daniel and Roosbeh, who's part of the core team, we're trying really to deep dive into that PMBOK with everyone in the network to share with them. However, really, I would love, really, Kelly, if whoever you talk to, you tell them there is a suggestion of why not having a project management awareness here and create sort of program really where millions and millions of PMI's adherents or fellows or followers, or PMI, whoever knows PMI and really is interested in PMI, the PMBOK, the PMP, and other certifications. Why don't we create some sort of program that it can, our target is to reach between 100 million to 300 million people aware inside companies about project management. If we do that, it's not about because we want PMI to sell more courses or certifications or PMBOK. It's because we want projects to succeed, really. Exactly. Because colleges, when I was, for example, in Europe, I think around, it's much better. But before, when I did the study, 30% of the companies only know PMI and project management or care about project management. United States is not that far as well, it was 35%. But in the rest of the world, that at least, until 5 years back, we're talking about 5 to 15% at best. Okay, of companies or decision makers at companies who value project management, know project management, care about project management, even have a project management office or project manager role in a contract. So yeah, really, I mean, we just suggested here, Daniel and I, is up to PMI if they ever want to consider this, really, Kelly. But from your face, I think you like it somehow. I don't know, from your face tells me this. I don't know if I'm mistaken.
I love to hear it.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
So
again,
please,
you already know that, man.
Yeah. So really, we can take it offline whenever you want. But really, I am for having a project management awareness here. And even Daniel and I, we were talking just I think Tuesday, and because this year, for example, myself, I try to I provide training to 5,600 people, free training, PMP, PMO combined. Daniel, I think, is the top one on LinkedIn in project management and sharing project management awareness through his posts, I think, to be honest. Okay, and for next year, even we're planning stuff, Daniel and I, more and more, sharing knowledge and awareness about project management. And so really, we want to share this with you, Kelly. And just to let you know that we're trying to spread knowledge, because I think without projects, most companies cannot succeed or cannot function properly, because if they had proper project management knowledge and discipline, I think the rate of failure in projects would decrease significantly. What do you think, Kelly?
I completely agree. I mean, in some of the research I was mentioning before, tries to validate, right, that suspicion, and then looks at specific drivers. According to some research we published earlier in the year, and are subsequently building on, project success isn't binary. project doesn't succeed or fail, right? It's, of course, it's a spectrum, right? And so, the way that we conducted our research reflects this in looking at, our measurement of success is, did the project deliver value that exceeded the effort and expense that was invested in it, right? So, our definition of success is not, was it on time? Was it under budget? Was it within scope? It's really try to use the language of business or of value to understand what many project stakeholders and project managers actually, right, intuitively understand to be like, did this project succeed or did this project fail? And using that definition, there are a couple of major buckets that success or failure falls into. We actually find that it's a fairly, at least in the subset of projects that we were studying, a minority of them were outright failures. Much more of that spectrum fell into this, well, it succeeded in some ways and it fell short of expectations in other ways bucket, right? And looking at, was on that spectrum of success towards failure. And, I was calling out a couple of the key findings that I've been thinking a lot about and my team has been thinking a lot about from a learning and best practices support point of view. So, just to reiterate them super briefly, one of the biggest drivers was a measurement system being put in place to track whether value being delivered over time or even other mechanics of how the project was administered. That commitment to setting that measurement system up front and following it through was to significantly move the needle in terms of project outcomes, according to the methodology we were using in the survey. If the project had counted among its outcomes, not as the primary goal, but just among some of the things that were a result of the project, some dimension of social good or social benefit or social impact. And we measured that in terms of actually the UN SDG categories, of different ways we could define, a positive social impact. That was also a major predictive factor for the success or failure of the project. References on that about, how that type of value can compensate for missing the mark on other ones where you get to this net evaluation of a benefit. When projects lacked any type of social, tangible social benefit that they delivered, the success rate was far below the global average for projects overall. So to me, that's also really meaningful. And a third area, if anything, one that I think I've spent the most time thinking about and speaking about, and that has had the most direct impact on our strategy and philosophy around upskilling and development and so on, has to do with some of the behavioral and attitudinal factors, strategic mindset that project managers bring to driving a project. So we have an acronym that we've used to kind of organize this so far at PMI, MORE, right? Looking at kind of these four major aspects of how project professionals can show up in their work. M stands for managing perceptions, and the project professional was fairly effective in managing stakeholder point of view on things. O is owning project success beyond project management success, which essentially reflects what I was saying before, right? Do I pat myself on the back? I did a great job if it was on time, even if everything was a mess? No, most project professionals don't do that anyway, right? But especially when that's explicitly part of the self-evaluation somebody gave themselves for driving a project, that's correlated with better project outcomes and more value delivered. R reflects a commitment to relentlessly reassess project parameters, right? Being flexible in the face of changing context is usually pretty critical for not losing the forest for the trees. And the last one is expanded perspective, which really has to do with thinking about the holistic impact of a project on your community, your organization, stakeholders that are not necessarily part of the core project, which ties pretty directly back, I think, to the notion about overall social impact or benefit as a driver of successful project outcomes. So sorry, it's a mouthful, but those are some of the major things we've been focused on the basis of our research when we think specifically about where do we actually have the biggest impact when we invest in certain types of systems, certain types of framing, or certain types of skills, attitudes, and behavioral orientations, which is really that last bucket, to drive successful project outcomes. And the last bucket is one that's well addressed by learning and coaching and peer connection and storytelling. So that's a big area of focus for us because it's often the most within the scope of control of any given project professional for whatever project you've been handing. You always have at least some modicum of control over how you show up to that project, right? Even if you don't have a broader control over certain other dimensions of the environment you're working in.
Right. For that more, it was announced during Phoenix gathering, the global summit. Is there going to be anything published? Like, I want to say a guide, maybe small guide, maybe. And what's the relationship between MORE and the PMI talent triangle?
Oh, these are such good questions. And, I've been trying to join the chat and it's telling me to connect to my YouTube identity, which I don't have. So otherwise I would drop in the chat a bunch of these links. So let's figure it out. The answer is yes. We already have, and there's so much more to come. So let me take this in order. Secondarily, this question one, have we put stuff out on this? Like, this sounds like an important area to invest in. Yes, absolutely. So we are continuously conducting research and then publishing research in this area, right? So there's a big study that was published towards the beginning of this year that introduced some of the findings I was just talking through, as well as this mnemonic framing of some of these skill areas, and additional research coming out just this month that builds on that and looks very specifically at a whole different set of specific behaviors. It's really a deep dive into that kind of like, what's within our behavioral scope of control to get even more fine-grained about how those things drive particular outcomes for projects. What we have also published, so that's research, right? Where we're continuously building our understanding of what's important here and then reflecting back and sharing those within the community with the organizations we partner with. We just put out at Phoenix, we announced the release of a course. Actually, it's free to PMI members. It's free to anybody in the world. It's called the MORE Essentials, right? It's really giving you Foundations 101, digging in on some of the research I talked about and kind of some skill building around some of those areas. We have a collection of curated learning experiences in 12 key skill areas that ladder up to the MORE framework. And I would love to share them with the audience. Maybe I'll need to create a YouTube account on the fly. So
if you want, you can like share it with me, and I can just share with the audience. Wow, we would really love to hear more from you about MORE and also its relationship with PMI Talent Triangle or its impact on any guides or standards or even the certifications.
Yeah, 100%. So, there's a very direct correlation, I think. The PMI Talent Triangle, for those who aren't as familiar with it as we are, is essentially an organizing framework for talking about the knowledge and skills and attitudes that are most important to success in project management or leading and driving project-driven work. It's called a triangle because there are three main buckets to the taxonomy. One, we call ways of working. And this essentially talks about a lot of your technical bread and butter skills. 3-point estimating, right? Understanding the different focus areas of, standing up a project all the way to closing things out. Looking at float, looking at drag. Looking at a lot of different aspects of technical core project management, applying agile methodologies. That's one bucket. Technical skills, when I think about what's showing up for us in the research and in the MORE framework, when we look at things like measurement systems, that's square on the money of the core foundational aspects of doing a good job managing a project are critical to success. All this stuff about let's think differently about value, or we think beyond the end of the project. It's not just about project management success. It's not about project management success. It's just about more than that, right? So the ways of working part of the PMI Talent Triangle, or put a different way, the technical skills as part of what we think about building, managing, writing about, delivering courses about, this affirms the importance of the technical skill set. Right. There are two other aspects of the talent triangle that have always been important And I think we see in a new light on the basis of this research as well. So let's talk about the next side. This is what we call power skills or human skills. You might call them soft skills. Some people don't like that terminology, but this is about all the things that we know are just as or more important to driving successful project teams and project outcomes. It's communication, it's negotiation, conflict resolution, the vast array of leadership type skills. When I think about managing stakeholder perceptions as something that's coming up in our research as critically important, and also kind of the systems thinking dimension of thinking about the impact of your project work on other people, that amplifies to me some of those areas of skill development that are important for us in the power skills area. Let me talk about the last part of the triangle, and then I can explain in more detail how this is showing up in our learning and development strategy. The last part of the triangle is what we call business acumen. And actually, based on our own research on business acumen, this is an area that has historically been undervalued, not just by project professionals, but also by organizations, right?
Correct.
Have not historically seen this as something that's super important for them to invest in for their project professionals. So these are things like financial acumen and understanding of industry and business context and ability to think about cause and effect, critical thinking systems, thinking interdependent systems that you have within an organization or a complex environment. This is an area, our own research had identified as undervalued compared to other parts of the talent triangle. And you might have the question, does that matter? Maybe that's fine. Maybe this part's just a little bit less important than the other two. To me, one of the major findings of this research is that is not true. Actually, business acumen is a skill set, whether that's helping you own project outcomes, expand your perspective to understand the actual income, understand what motivates the stakeholders whose perceptions you're trying to manage, right? This could not be more important. And so that's been a big area of investment for us when we think about curating new materials areas. All three parts of the talent triangle are important. The new research affirms it. It points to certain sub-skills in our ways of working, like relentlessly reassessing project parameters or measurement systems or certain types of power skills that are especially important now. And it broadly affirms the importance of business acumen. And so that's why we brought out this course this year that talks about all the different, dimensions of the skill and these curated pathways that I just shared on the side, and maybe we'll get to the audience, hopefully. But it's completely driving the way we think about what we're investing in for the community for next year and beyond, because we know this is what's important to the success of projects, which is ultimately what's important to the success of project managers in our community.
Right. You would say, I don't know, Danny, if you have any question about just Kelly, just more remark.
No, no worries. Go for it, man.
No, Steve, Danny. You're right. I personally, I struggled for a while to let people know that power skills actually are not soft skills. Really, it's not. I mean, we used to call them 10, 15 years ago. You're right, Kelly. Yes, 10, 15 years ago, we used to call them soft skills. I'm glad PMI calls them power skills. I even call them people skills because now I see posts on LinkedIn where people are saying that project management is 90% people and 10% process. Okay, I don't agree with that much for reasons I shared many times my view on that, because it's not just people. It's I would say 50-50. But really, yes, power skills is absolutely people skills. I mean, if ever PMI would ever even think of renaming that, I think the best and ideal name would be people skills, Daniel. And Daniel actually is great, really. I mean, one of the most advocates for leadership, emotional intelligence, people skills, or people management in projects, because really, Daniel, I think you're the best one to describe, how you see that, in project management, people-centered leadership or projects and people-centered projects.
No, I couldn't agree more. And Kelly, thank you for all of that. I was just blown away by a lot of the stuff you said. And I am so happy, kind of going back to how we originally started this with the explosion of all the different things. To me personally, as a project manager, forget about everything else and talking on LinkedIn, all this, me personally, as a project manager, project leader, I've been more excited to be a project manager than I have in my entire career, although I've always been excited. the acknowledgement, even the shift from, those soft skills, I hate that term, to the power skills, like it really puts the emphasis on what they are. Because like Ahmed said, if you read anything on LinkedIn, I'm always talking about the human-centered project leadership or project management, which is really power skills. Again, I don't think it's 90-10%. It's probably closer to 50-60, depending on the environment. But at the end of the day, they are critically important, and the focus, or maybe refocus on them as essential, and then combining out with the business acumen, which I've seen too many businesses not really understand well, and also project managers, unfortunately, not understand that their role should include some of that stuff. Although some think that may touch on the strategy side too much as far as the tactical delivery part, but that should be what we do. If you want to, advance, run a PMO or whatever the case may be, you need to know that stuff. And it's been critical, and it just, I can't even express the level of excitement I have for it. That's why me and Ahmed do these things, and we talk to millions of people all the time. And we cannot emphasize enough how exciting, awesome project management is. And although 1969, all these great things for me, from now till even 5-10 years ago, it feels like, yeah, we had some old, nice, stale frameworks, and it was good. We had the book, we knew what to do. But it required all these other things. And now it's caught up, and they're all coming together in the delivery, the courses, the training, the programs, the articles that are all the different things PMI is putting together. And constantly, every 5 seconds, it feels like they're putting something out. It's kind of bringing all this stuff together and kind of just dropping it there, right? Take it or leave it. This is where we are now, whether you accept that or not. And I talk to people who are kind of stuck in the past, but mostly people are very excited about the future. But kind of going back to some of the question that Ahmed had earlier about the business part, and I kind of had the same question. Mm-hmm. I see, and again, I hate to talk about LinkedIn because, but anyway, LinkedIn. Sometimes I post about things about the business not recognizing the true value of project management, and also PMs themselves sometimes. But the project manager, and with all the great research you just mentioned, and I see a lot of it, and it is amazing, and it really ties the industry together with the industry of the professionals. Mm-hmm. Have you ever considered or thought, or not only the training or the learning development of the PM themselves or the PMO, but the business, like making either a certification for the business, like, hey, this is what project management should or could be, because we have numbers from 20 to 70% project failure, depending on what you looked at, but you summed it up perfectly. I couldn't agree more with what you said. Yeah. But again, you see all this data and all these crazy stats and numbers, especially on social media. And at the end of the day, there's no other industry in the world that would accept those numbers. If I had a manufacturing line, that product would be off the line in 2 seconds. So right. Although the project manager could control a lot of that, there still is the business, the culture, the environment, the sponsor, the owner, the CEO, the executive C-suite. Is there any consideration, or have you guys thought, I'm sure this was thought of at some point, to maybe either develop something with the businesses so that the project managers could be more successful, of course, doing what you just said?
Oh, 1,000,000%. And that is, it ties back to what I was saying before. I think about, really our effort to conduct and reflect back some of this research in a way that speaks the language of the business, the way that speaks the language of the C-suite, right? And there's absolutely, it's so funny, you can't see this probably because I have 2 whiteboards over here, but is there a course on project sponsorship? Is there a project sponsor toolkit, right? Specifically from a learning and development point of view that we should be thinking about. But, more broadly, even if it's not a course or, a book specifically dedicated to this audience, this has been a huge area of focus and investment for us at PMI, exactly because of what you're saying here, right? It's like, we may be part of helping executives and business and enterprise leaders wake up to the reality of the dominance of project-driven work and the importance of effective project management to good project outcomes. There's a lot to put behind that. And it doesn't stop there, right? It isn't like you should really be thinking about this. You should respect your project managers a little bit more, like, good luck with that, right? What does that look like? Well, it might look like investing in things that make, for example, standardized measurement of, project progress and outcomes, easier for your team so that they're not scrapping it together, because that's correlated with this significant bump in project, related outcomes. When you think about learning and development for your project teams, for your project managers, and for your mid-level managers who are often stewarding these projects, it might look like investing in these particular skill areas aligned with the MORE vision for the profession, some of the skill areas that are showing up in our research. And I think specifically when we talk about business acumen, something I think about a lot is, I think something that is experientially true and kind of common sense. Like a lot of us have this sense from working on projects and working with project managers. And you're like, man, it really goes well when the project manager has a keen sense of the business, how the business works, and an understanding of how the goals of this project ladder up to our broader outcomes. It's also worth naming, like, that's not necessarily easy to come by all the time. It's not, right? It's like, that's actually very tough to build on purpose. And generally, as a project professional, you are excellent in the art and science of leading projects. And usually professional growth or day-to-day work for you involves leading and managing a bunch of different projects for different business units of increasing complexity. Of course, you're not familiar with the context of this business unit. So it's about what are the ways, what's the skill set, the mindset, how do we use AI to think about that parachute in and build that context as quickly as possible as an important part of business acumen. It's not you internalize it all and then you use it forever. You need to be able to build that just like a consultant, right? You have management consultants, love them or hate them, they're great at this, right? Okay, now we're working with oil and gas. You don't know anything about it? No problem. We expect you to skill up sufficiently to be able to ask good questions and drive effective outcomes here. I think that's really similar for project managers, and it's more true now than it has been historically.
No, great answer. I couldn't agree more. And something as simple as I've worked with project sponsors who wanted to help her succeed, but they had no idea how. And then I had to train them how to work with us so we could successfully deliver the project together, give some ownership to them as well as our team. And of course, the project always turned out better. So no, great answer. Thank you so much.
Right. Kelly, in probably 3 years from now, PMO will probably be celebrating its 60th anniversary, 6 decades. Now, if I would envision the 100th anniversary, really, 40 years from now it would tell me, Ahmed, come on, please. We barely can think about the next 2 to 3 years. You're right. However, many people actually are wondering, people started being worried in the past couple of years about AI, and we've talked about this with few people who we had, in our podcast series. Kathleen Walsh was with us, and she spoke about AI, the CPM AI certification, AI in projects, managing AI projects, and AI in projects backwards, okay, both ways, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to take this from Kelly. Kelly, the Vice President of Learning at PMI. PMI would definitely want to be here for the next hundreds of years, definitely. Mm-hmm. For PMI to be here, we need people to be still practicing project management. Yes. Absolutely. Okay, now, how is PMI looking at AI in the world of project management? On one hand, we need AI because we want to make things better, faster, quicker, more exact, more precise. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, as PMI, we don't want AI to take project managers' jobs. Is that something hard to balance?
Yes. Oh my goodness. Well, if there's anything we've studied more than project success, it's this in the last 2 years. It's exactly this question. Because there is a very well publicized Gartner research that had some kind of terrifying statistic, not just for project management, by the way, but for a bunch of industries, saying, up to X% of the daily tasks of this particular role or this particular industry could be automated away, accomplished by, or radically transformed by AI. And that percent for project management, which is one they looked at, was 80%. 80%. So you can look at that and say, does that mean in a couple of years we are going to have 80% fewer project managers? No is the short answer, because it wouldn't happen that quickly anyway. But more seriously, I think that was exactly the types of the specific questions are, all right, which tasks, how are they transformed? What does that mean about the role of project professionals, right? Especially some of those human skills, power skills that we know are the actual things that are critical predictors of success or failure here, as well as the strategic business acumen that's important. How does what's needed for success in projects, right? How does project success change in light of AI replacing, extending, expanding, or speeding up some of the bread and butter tasks that drive successful project outcomes? That's like a huge part of our research portfolio. And what we have found so far is, I think, very similar to the conclusion that we're arriving at in a number of other knowledge industries, which is, is AI going to take your job? No. Is the person in the next office who's great at using AI going to take your job if you don't figure out how to use it? Probably, right? And so that's really been our quest is, all right, how do we figure out exactly like you're saying, Ahmed, both sides of, how can we help empower and work with the entire community, because we're all figuring this out together, right? How can we work with the community to figure out the specific ways, the specific workflows, the specific tools, the specific knowledge areas that can help speed up or improve or enhance or shift some aspects of project work? We have a whole suite actually of courses that are specifically designed to help, from introduction to generative AI, to specific AI workflows, to data cleaning and the data landscape behind using AI for project management, to industry specific deep dives. This has been a huge area of research for us. Our answer is not that there will be no project management, no projects management work, or no PMI in 50 years' time, but it is that the nature and the work of how project managers work will change significantly over that period of time, right? And we want to be a big part of helping amplify that. We want project managers and portfolio and program managers to be leaders in their organizations and exemplars and good partners to executive leadership, right, as part of organizational strategy for how the rest of the workforce can think about evolving their work. Part two is the one you were mentioning before, Ahmed, as well, which is, if we think about what proportion of projects have to do with fill in the blank, what proportion of global projects have to do with product development, what proportion of global projects are focused on infrastructure building, what proportion of global projects are focused on digital transformation in the last 15 years? Big
Right.
proportion, right? Of that proportion, which is growing, how much of that is AI-driven transformation?
Right.
Significantly growing, right? So actually, not just the way you do your work, but the kinds of projects you may be working on next specifically have to do with driving AI. And we know that's a big global need that our community can help foster, right? To do that, what knowledge and skills and fluency in the technology are important for them to be able to help lead that outside of the transformation of their own work.
Wow. So I believe that PMI is aware of the fears some people have expressed over AI. You have very well presented it right now. Probably for now, it is not AI that will take over your role as a project manager or in whatever industry, whatever job role you have, but it's actually the person like in the next office who actually masters AI or has developed AI skills. Now, if one would ask PMI, what would be the skills people need to learn for the next 5 to 10 years? We probably would focus more on the next 5 years more than the next 10 years, but what would be the key skills, Kelly, for anyone to need to learn, for the next few years?
There's a way of classifying skills that comes from a professor at Stanford, Kian Katafanouche. I don't think he originated it, but he's really popularized it, which breaks skills down into two big buckets. One we call durable skills. So these are ones that tend to be transversal. They are valid in many, they're useful in many different contexts. And if we think about 5-year, 10-year, 50-year time horizon, we have reasonable confidence that these skills are still going to be important to success in whatever area we're talking about, right? So on the one hand, the way we think about investing in durable skills is different than the way we think about investing in this other bucket, which we call perishable skills. Now, these are skills that often are more tightly connected to current systems, current technology. It does not mean these skills are not important. AI fluency is a perfect example of critically important, probably somewhat perishable skills. A lot of what's in the courses I was just talking about that have been a huge area of focus for my team, we need to go back and refresh every 6 months because ChatGPT has completely changed the way that it behaved. And so a lot of the advice and recommendations, we source there, it can now do all these other things. So when we think about the most important skills, it's both and. It's some subset of durable skills. Some of those fall into the dimension of stakeholder management, perception management, business acumen, and systems thinking that we were talking about before. That's my top 5 in the durable skills area.
Yeah.
And then when we think about perishable skills, it really is all about AI in terms of what we've been investing in that we know is super important across different project fields, across different industries. Now, that's understanding some of the upsides and downsides of the technology, how to use it safely, the ethics of AI, and so on, as well as very specific technical aspects of how you might use it to accomplish your work. There are a lot of other perishable skills that are often important to success. I think about understanding certain current like geopolitical or procurement or industry context is another good example. It's not just technology. It's also stuff that, it may be super important for you on this project in your work to understand certain aspects of how the law works. And then the law changes. Okay. Now we're going to invest in learning something different, right? But both are important for success. Durable skills are not better. They take longer to build. They are harder to internalize, right? They are also much more transversal. And so to get back to your question, you were like, ask a specific question. We have some specific answers embedded there. But really, we think about balancing our investment in what we try to produce and encourage because each individual member of our community needs to think about investing in both of these areas for success now and for success into the future. But if you say, what's it going to look like in 5 or 10 years? Anything we have in this bucket is going to be gone, evolved, replaced, new, right? Anything we have in the durable skills area, we think about investing in that with the expectation that that sustains its relevancy for much longer.
Okay. Wow.
I can tell you do this a lot. You have very well thought out and very concise answers. And I guess the last question I have for you, with all this being said and all this great information, thank you so much again, Kelly, for your time today. I've learned a lot. I thought I knew everything from the website, but I've learned a lot more today than I did before I was on here. I think I might have mentioned this right before we came on or right when we did come on about at the summit, they announced, another certification or talked about it a little bit. And there's not much information. I know I think only a few people are able to even get access to even the smell of it, let alone the content of it. I'm sure there's a lot you can't talk about, but with all the things we just talked about today and how important it is and all the great changes that the industry as well as PMI have, can you, whatever you can, of course, tell us a little bit about kind of the thinking into that, what's going into that, some of the stuff we just talked about, or is that going into that? And really, what's the difference? I know program, portfolio management, those are kind of similar, but different. This would be more, it seems like a PMP plus, a little bit more. What kind of the skills of all the different things that you talked about would go into that? And are there any, of course, that you could talk about?
Yes, of course. Well, naturally, we want to preserve an air of mystery.
Yes.
I'm only joking. We want to preserve the integrity of the development process, right? As we're developing this with our community and with organizational partners and so on. More broadly, right? Why are we exploring this space? We already have advanced specialized certifications. Why do we believe that there's something important and valuable to try to support, to measure, to validate, which is what you're doing ultimately with a professional certification program? Why do we think there's something unique to try to assess here and validate for individuals and for organizations who employ them that we don't already have. And I would actually take it back to the very start of our conversation, which is we're like, man, it seems like there's a lot happening right now, right? Why is that? And I was like, because the need is really big right now. And so that means different subject areas. But for us, it also means we think about career long learning and development for project professionals, right? A lot of our history, appropriately, I think, PMI, we've had the opportunity to invest very significantly in folks who were at middle career, middle seniority, right? You're not just starting out, you have a certain level of professional experience, et cetera. That's the moment in time we want to help validate that with something like the PMP, right? And then as you evolve and develop, right, there are certain specializations beyond, whether it's project management office, et cetera, where we've developed standards and we've developed courses and we've developed certifications for the later career audience, as well as the earlier career audience, for more than a decade ago, first invested in their CAPM credential for folks who don't have years and years of experience. More broadly, the reason why we're thinking about an advanced project professional certification and exploring that as, a companion to or something that builds upon and in some ways integrates some of the wisdom of our other advanced certifications is really coming out of this emergent need in our dialogue with organizations who have expressed the value of being able to build and then validate a more advanced skill set that hones in not simply on some of the things that are most technically valuable or important to managing collections of projects, which often you're doing as you sort of move along in your project-based career, or a portfolio, or leading and managing a PMO office, which are all really important ways you might specialize within your career. But in an era of mega projects and giga projects and increasingly complex projects, even if it doesn't seem like it should be that dang complex, right? Because of technological complexity, geopolitical complexity, interpersonal complexity, the work involved involves systems thinking, and advanced project skills, even on single projects, in a way that a lot of, that need was not as pressing, let's say, on a global scale 10 years ago. And it's really that set of questions and skills that we're aiming to address and thinking about this step forward with an additional advanced certification.
So this,
I've been asked that by a million people. Everyone knew you were coming, and everyone was like, "Ask her about the certification that's coming out."
Kelly, that advanced certificate. Okay, look. Now let's simplify things, to people. So, guys, when someone starts in the project management function, usually they would start either, as a junior project manager or a PMO, either PMO support or controlling PMO or any types of PMO. Usually that's how people start in project management generally, okay? Or there is the other way, the other type, which is being into the project management stuff, like, administrative staff or a co-project manager, project support, etc. But then people will start growing. Now, if someone moves to the project manager position, now, if you're a project manager, you get, you think of the PMP certification. If you're a program manager, you think of the GMP. If you're a portfolio manager, you think of the PFMP. That's so far what you have from PMI, as simple as that. I'm not going into Agile and the other stuff now. I'm just going to focus on the core. Even though PMO CP is not core yet, I expect it to be core soon. That's what my brain tells me, to be honest. Okay. Now, the question, Kelly, is this new certification which you just mentioned, based on Daniel's question, is it going to be addressed to the project managers or program portfolio managers, or is it something totally different, or is it something that combines all of them, or just a little bit of, glimpse of idea, something, exclusive scoop, something scoop.
An exclusive scoop just among us three close personal friends, right? It's really, it's such an important question, thinking about here are different ways over the past 10 years, 15 years, we've conceptualized these different subsets of what the profession looks like, right? Okay, is this new? Is this for some of these? Is this for all of these? Is it different? Is it over and above? And what I would say about how we're thinking about the organizational need we're trying to support and the individual development we're trying to support is broader than some of those, more narrow ways of kind of, conceptualizing roles and responsibilities. And that's because of the way that project-driven work and project professional careers keep changing, right? Not just due to AI, but also due to what we were talking about before, right? The dramatic scope and expansion of project-based work. So it's really about recognizing the fact that a lot of advanced, more senior project professionals who are excelling in their work and delivering huge impact for their organization, for their community, they do that by leading and managing high stakes projects, right? Projects with a significant impact that often involves a significant amount of internal and external complexity to navigate, right? It might have something to do with the scale of the budget or the duration of the timeline, right? That constitutes high stakes for an enterprise or an organization. But, if you think about that framing, that's not actually something that our current certification portfolio addresses very directly. And so, you may be having a big impact or managing what we would call high stakes projects that are technically a program of coordinated projects, or that you have portfolio level responsibilities. But the stakes of the outcome of that work for the enterprise and for the organization and the skill set that's entailed there is something that's become, I think, more salient for individuals and organizations. And that really drives more than any kind of specific definition of particular role definitions, if that makes sense.
Right.
I would also say from a workforce development point of view, that kind of fluidity and changeability in roles within the project professions and beyond is going to continue, right? We've seen a lot of flexibility and changeover and turnover in individual titles and so on. So from that lens, which I feel pretty strong in speaking from, I think it's a smart investment also because across industries and also just over time, I think we will continue to see the fracturing and re-agglomeration of different job responsibilities and job tasks. And this feels like a more resilient schematic for capturing a collection of skills that we're aiming to validate with this one.
Wow. Just probably 3 to 4 weeks ago, I started posting. I posted, I think, 3 times about how I imagine advanced project management certifications to be. And I posted my view on 2 certifications that are like fictitious so far. Just, I call them from my top of my mind. I called one SPM, Senior Project Manager, and I called one the PMster, the Project Master. But both are so different. Like the Senior Project Manager, it goes probably the same direction you mentioned, like the Advanced Project Management Certification, whereas the Project Master certification, even though it doesn't exist in the world, is something, again, I just came up with, from the top of my head. It's something more hands-on, practical. It's not book-based, it's not playbook-based, or a theory-based, or a guide-based. It's more on a practical side. It's actually a tool, user-friendly tool, something in the palm of your hand, which would be your companion, your project management companion, which you need to use for, like, let's say, at least for 6 to 12 months on a daily basis while managing your project. Something would help you really, be on top of your project so that you can be then qualified as a project master. Because one of the things I keep hearing from people is this: it's nice to have the PMBOK. It's, thousands of people besides the core team have contributed to that with their comments. And I really appreciate how PMI opened for the comment rounds twice. Actually, as Jesse Fuel mentioned 2 days ago, and we are aware since last year, but many people say the PMBOK doesn't apply to real life. people, not at least not to every industry, not to every company. It's so perfect, like, you just need to sit and watch it, but you cannot really apply it. And we keep telling people, even in my PMP training, I keep telling people, hey, I have worked in companies, huge companies, where we really followed PMBOK word by word. I told you this in the backstage offline. Clearly, we really did, really, literally, but still that applies just to small percentage of companies that are big enough, corporations that are, they have their center of excellence, project management center of excellence, very well established PMO, clear roadmap for project management, career growth, all the e-learning templates, processes in place, all the tools, everything, you name it, everything you need to succeed as a project manager, program manager, portfolio manager, etc. But now back to the reality of 99% of the companies and people, they say, no, we study the PMBOK, we join the training guys, but we just get the certification, the PMP, for example, and then we suddenly are hit by a wall. We cannot proceed further trying to apply what we learned because the OPAs, the organizational processes where we work, are different, the EFs are different, etc. Is PMI aware of this, and what's PMI's response to that?
Yes, of course. Yes, we are aware of this. And I would trace this back to I think it's an inescapable balance you need to strike with anything that is aiming to be a standard, a benchmark, in the way that we try to position something like the PMBOK or our other standards and guides, right? We really aspire to be as broad as possible. And that means globally, right? We want some of the things that are, that emerge from the dialogue that we have with our development and review teams. We want them to represent best practice as specifically as possible in a way that is globally applicable across industries, right? Applicable across different project types and project formats. And so you're always needing to make a trade-off between specificity and abstraction. And you don't want to wind up so abstract that it's very globally true, but then there's this big gap between the advice that's given here and how I can actually try to use it to figure out what I should be doing at any particular moment at work, or that an organization should be trying to do in applying this framework, right, to project governance. It's a tough balance to strike. It will always be a balance, right? So there will always be that gap, of the materials to kind of specific applicability. It would only be more inapplicable if it were more specific in some areas, right? Because then you would have a greater divergence for a particular context. But as you were mentioning earlier, core to our ethos in developing any of these benchmarks is continuous community input, right? So we can strike the best balance and be as inclusive and relevant as possible across the board. So we love getting that type of feedback through our open comment periods and just ongoing, right? Now we just put one out into the world. And if you think that means we stop, we're like, we did it, we're all done. Far from the truth, right? This is just the next important step of getting additional feedback and thinking about, all right, how much more has the profession evolved, and will what good looks like continue to evolve so we can continue to flex, what we've produced.
Oh, thank you. I think we have just 10 minutes left, few minutes left. Daniel, many questions?
Yeah, so that's what I'm just taking a look at. There's a few questions. I guess I'll start with the first one that's more in line with what you were just talking about, Kelly. Actually, it goes back to the more advanced certification. It seems like, anyway, they were talking about what's the vision of it. Is it PM as a professional plus SME, I guess, or SME expertise, or SME? Sorry, I can't talk today. SME expertise with PM skills. So one or the other. That makes sense. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. We're talking about durable or perishable.
I put the question on screen. So you have the question on the screen. It's from the
question. Sorry about that.
Of course. And I should also say there are so many good questions in the chat, and I keep seeing them.
Yeah, there's a lot.
I hope we'll have the opportunity to kind of follow up and address some of them asynchronously. I'd love to stay engaged on LinkedIn for anything we don't get to. Please. What I'll say, trying to be brief so we can get to as many questions as we still have. Specifically on this one, we think about, using the framing of durable versus perishable skills, and what we've identified as most important, what we're trying to target with our advanced certification offering, is really an emphasis on more durable skills, so that the competencies that are most important in driving success in high stake projects. That's really the emphasis of the research and the emphasis of what we're aiming to validate. To be honest, for very similar reasons to what we were just discussing in terms of how we think about shaping our courses and our standards and our publications. It's a beautiful global community that we support. And so we're always aiming to, produce materials that are as transversal as possible, right? And also that can, where we're not completely missing the mark in particular areas because of over specificity. That's why we do so much research that goes into a lot of our work, especially our certification portfolio, global surveys of different skills and job tasks that are critical for success, so that we have that evidence-based lens for what we're evaluating.
I'll put on screen, if you don't mind, Daniel, another question here. So this question is from Marwan Younsi. He says I put on screen as well, like with the expanded perspective element suggests looking beyond deliverables to social impact. So with your background in ethics, how do you see the role of the project manager evolving into that of a conscious of the project, ensuring we aren't just building things right, but building the right things?
I absolutely love this question. It made me so happy when I saw it in the chat before, and I skipped past this when I was introducing myself before, but yes, I do have a background in ethics. I have a PhD in ethics, actually, and that's what I taught when I got my first job as an accidental project manager years back at Georgetown University. So that was my introduction, actually, to the field, it's, personal for me. It's one of the things that I find most resonant in some of the research I was citing before, specifically the power of, societal or community outcomes and being correlated with project success. And I love this framing. This is a venue for me to get lots of good suggestions. We have the year of awareness. Now we have this conscience of the project, and beautiful framing around ensuring we aren't just building things right, but building the right things. And I think those are actually two really powerful different dimensions, right? So what the goals and outcomes, the specific value a project is meant to deliver, is not always within the scope of control of a project manager for any given project. It often can be, and I love the positioning of this as a conscience of raising questions or saying, if we adjusted this aspect of how we approach this, I think we could have this other good outcome or avoid this negative outcome, and really think about that beyond the defined scope. I also think when we talk about building things the right way, if I can build on the kind of framing here, that's a big area of emphasis for us as well. And I would really, if you're not familiar with it, I would direct your attention to the partnership we have with Green Project Management, where there's a wealth of resources that specifically focus on how do we think not just about what the project goals are, but how we achieve those goals in a way that actually is conscious of the impact of our ways of working, whether that's procurement or the way we set up the project team or the way we do some of our purchasing, the impact that those decisions have on people and on the planet, right? And some of those are process-based and some of those are product-based. So this, I think, is a really important way that we're trying to help, that we think about expanding perspective, is also thinking about some of the very specific project and process decisions that come up within the course of a project are themselves potential moments of conscience, right? To think about the impact, not just that the outcome has, but also those discrete choices can have on choosing a more sustainable, distributor rather than another, is an obvious example, but there are so many more. And so those resources, again, Green Project Management with a partnership with PMI. When I can get in the comments, I'll post a link as well, but that's a great place to look for making that very tangible and specific.
Yeah. Thank you. Daniel, any other comment you want to put on screen?
There's a lot of good comments. There was one in there. It looks like either someone from your staff or someone from your team commented, just talking about, in case people miss this, what is PMI doing to work with organizations to ensure that the value of the PMP is well understood within the organization, of course, for hiring processes and stuff like that.
Yes, thank you, Carla. She's
I know. I figured she's back on your team or worked with you.
She's a very important leader at PMI. I'm so grateful she's here, and she's even better positioned to answer that question than I am. So
nice. So it's a quick question. I know 2 seconds. I know we have to jump off quick, but as far as the green certification, I've seen quite a few people that are either interested, talking about it, or just got it. Can you just talk for a few seconds about some of that? I know that I was actually looking into that certification before the partnership. So obviously now you're putting the PMI wrapper around it, which makes it even better, more valuable. So for those, I've got a few questions about this. In the U.S., sustainability is a big thing, at least in the New York City area, the companies I work for anyway. So, and a few, even the bosses that I work with, were interested in getting the team certified, and we're looking into this. So, again, not forever, but just in a few seconds, to kind of give a little blurb, tell people what that's about, and where to find it, that kind of stuff. Besides the website, obviously.
Yes, of course, and I'll drop those links as well. So, as you were just saying, Daniel, when I talk about green, sustainable project management or regenerative project management, we're so lucky to get to partner with an organization that's dedicated so much thought and research to this area. Historically, that includes things like standards and frameworks. I was just quoting from one before, right? Where it offers project professionals a tool set for evaluating the impact of project outcomes, the product of the project, as well as the processes you use to achieve it. So this is freely available to anyone to download and look at. Within our, we have a proprietary LLM at PMI called PMI Infinity. There's actually a whole agent that can help you do an audit and an evaluation of particular projects using that framework, looking at project outcomes. There's a certification associated, as you were just mentioning, Daniel, as well as a course that leads up to that. And a big area of focus for the GPM team and for my team has been actually sustainable project reporting too. Not just how do we make choices with project management, but how do we make sure, speaking of stakeholder management and perception management, how do we make sure that we are leveraging what's been done already in terms of a lot of the infrastructure around tracking, for example, the UN SDGs, but also translating sustainable outcomes from projects into the language of business to be heard by executive stakeholders. As we know, this is such an important driver of, or correlated with, I should say, project success. So, so much more to learn, and I can share a link as well for folks who are interested and want to learn more about any of those subcomponents, the course or the.
When I first started, all they had was PMP.
Right.
No, like anything you could find under the sun.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I think that's it. I think we can wrap this up. Thank you so much, Kelly, for being so flexible. Thank you, everyone watching. Really great questions. We tried to pick just, as many as we could. Really appreciate your flexibility, Kelly, your time. We wish PMI a lot of success. And I really wish that, project management awareness would be spread across the world. Really, we really need more awareness about the importance of, having structured project management or at least guided project management in companies. And we're here to support everyone, not just with certifications, guys, with knowledge, with delivering value in whatever initiatives you work on. And also we're here to make sure that we advance with the project management skills to a level that it will be always, a human-centered project management, not just people scared of AI. I'll let you, have the closing, Kelly, and whatever you want to say to the audience, and then I'll back to you, Daniel.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. It's been such a privilege. Lovely conversation, and it's a really good time to be working in projects. I mean, it's a really, really exciting, occasionally overwhelming, but super dynamic moment. So I'm thrilled to, be a part of thinking about how we step up and how we expand outward to meet some of the challenges of the moment. And it was a total pleasure getting to speak with both of you, and in particular getting to engage with other folks who have tuned in, and we'll keep the conversation going afterwards. So please get connected, stay connected. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you. Daniel, thank you so much.
No, same. Again, Kelly, thank you so much for your time. We were trying to find like one last big bang person because someone else couldn't make it. And you definitely exceeded all expectations. So thank you so much. And like Kelly mentioned before, drop your questions in the chat. Me, Ahmed, Kelly, her team, someone will try to get to them as soon as possible. But again, thank you guys so much for sitting with us for 12 weeks, listening to us go on and on and on with all these awesome experts and PM professionals. And it's been quite a pleasure, especially working with you, Ahmed. Been quite a pleasure, my friend.
And we want to tell people that the journey is continuing, guys. We have the other podcast series with the PMBOK 8 core team. And you probably started noticing, guys, Daniel and I are trying to host a huge event towards the year end on December 30th, where we have a gathering of all people from project management community, an open talk, online, virtual. We start posting about it on Daniel's profile. I will start posting about it on my profile as well. So everyone, see you towards the year end. Thank you so much, Kelly. Everyone, thank you. Have a nice rest of the evening. I'm ending this stream. Thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate all of it.